Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, dear organizers. Thanks for inviting me, Deputy. Thanks for breaking the ground with the first speech. I've come today to speak about Danish Hygge. Now, can I see a hand? How many of you have heard about Danish Hygge? Okay, quite a few, but not the majority. And let's get the pronunciation straight. Try and repeat after me. Hygge. Yeah, you're doing fine. Good, because it's not hygge. It's that y sound, and it sounds like you're already prepared to speak about it. Okay, so my name is Jeppe Linnet. I'm an anthropologist. I've done academic research on hygge for many years, and I'm also a native to the phenomenon, you can say. And I run a business today which helps companies understand their customers and innovate on that basis. Okay, the reason why I'm here is because the world is suddenly attentive to hygge, which is quite overwhelming when you see it from a Danish perspective and as someone who's done research on this while it's been really sort of like a secret in the world for many years. And suddenly it feels like this, like the whole world is just waiting for Danes to spread the light, and suddenly all these books are coming out at once, which I don't know the market wisdom of that, publishing all of them in 3 or 4 months, but they'll deal with that, the publishers. And it's sometimes it's a bit like, okay, Danes like to say no one else can understand the concept, only them. And that's why I've made this, which I hope won't offend anyone, just to make a bit of a joke out of it, because it can be explained. So what is hygge? I would like to call it a situational sense of ease and pleasure, which is very much focused on enjoying the here and now. So it's not like a stable condition that you live in. So it does not have any simple relationship to happiness. And I'm not going to speak about happiness as such here. It could be as something that supports happiness for sure. But it is a feeling of contrast. There's always a contrast in hygge to something that is stressful, competitive, and utilitarian, whether a lifestyle or a room that does not work well for you. So it is an atmosphere, an encompassing experience, multi-sensory, in fact, that rests on the way you are with other people, the mood of a particular encounter with other people. It's always specifically tied to something, and also the feel of the physical place that you are in. So we can talk about we can divide it into like the social factors and the material factors if we want to. How would hygge with other people be, and what would it not be? It would not be treated in an impersonal way by a bureaucrat who only sees you as a kind of category without any personality, because it's always personal. It would not be the angry boss who wants you to produce more, because hygge is not goal-oriented. It's about being accepted. It would not be the snob who disregards your choices and looks down upon you, and where you feel that you have to justify yourself more. It is about being present to each other, being close, personal, but not insistently intimate, not necessarily demanding people to spill their secrets or formulate the meaning of life. It is more laid back than that. It is about withholding challenge, judgment, requirements, so it shares some qualities with other things that people like mindfulness, for example, which is like being training how to be non-judgmental also to yourself. It is very much about being in a situation where you feel that you receive and also give permission to be yourself, but also give it to others. And it is very much about being informal, forthcoming, even though there are hierarchies in the world, and even though two people will have different status, when they have hygge together, they kind of disregard that. So what are places that are hygge-like? Well, here are some images from my favorite cafe in Copenhagen, and some of the things you can say about places that achieve this feel is that even if it is not the home, because it is like what we call a third place, not home, not work, but something out there where we like to go, it is still home-like. It is an enclosure. It affords some sense of privacy. If it is too open, too many people can see you, then it is hard for that hygge mood to really settle. You need some nooks, like you can see in the background here, where people can choose to look out the window and kind of be a little bit enclosed. Often there is like the warm lighting that Danes are good at and which we culturally prefer. Not all cultures prefer warm lighting, but Danes do. Natural materials like wood, metal that gets worn and gets that patina kind of feeling. And also a bit messy, you know, where you bring in, for example, used stuff that is classy but has a bit of history to it. I'm sure a lot of you also use some of these things in the way you decorate your own homes. Opposite would be the so-called non-places. That's a French anthropologist, Marc Auger. He's come up with that concept, which are like sterile, and they have no of that human scale. For example, financial districts or just sterile work environments, and with the fluorescent lighting in the ceiling that kind of makes everything very non-hyggely. So then you may ask, hey, I know all of this. How is hygge then exclusively Danish? And that is a very good question that can spur a lot of academic activity in trying to navigate this tricky question. And I would say it is not exclusively Danish, which may be a bit of a bomb under some of these books coming out, but it is not. We can imagine hygge as an experience and as a practice in all countries of the world, and all kinds of cultures would have it, because it's a basic need for human beings, the way I see it. But we could also say that there are perhaps reasons to say that it dominates Danish culture more than others. I see it as, I call it a particular cultural emphasis upon hygge in Denmark, which is different than uniqueness. So, for example, in language, the word is rich in meaning to Danes. It also contains actual critical meanings that are hard to convey briefly. We use it, Danes use it all the time in greetings, so it really dominates everyday language a lot. In culture, we have some values around equality and authenticity, where you can say that there is a cultural value for how people should be together, and that is hygge. And then in nationhood, so in the way that Danes regard themselves in the world, Denmark is a relatively small country. It used to be bigger. It used to possess colonial possessions. There is some in Greenland, but a lot of it is gone. For example, Norway. That was a shame. Instead, Danes have turned to making a virtue out of being small. And hygge often goes with small scale. So you see there is a resonance between sort of the space and the culture and the feeling here. But I would say hygge is still a universal aspect of life. It's a bit like the campfire experience that goes back to the Stone Age. I mean, it is about feeling safe where you are. It is about turning inward towards the group. There is often contrasts between light and dark, both literal but actually also metaphorical. I mean, good and bad sides of life. It's about being welcomed in a social circle, and also, of course, the risk of not being welcomed, which is always part of social life. There is a lot of sharing going on, sharing of food, sharing of drinks. They become like a center of the sociality. And you can also go into a criticism of hygge, and often Danes would be quick to remark that conflicts are subdued in a mood like this. People always hit the common denominator, and there is a risk for things to turn too much inward, and so hygge that goes too far becomes claustrophobic. But let's leave that for now and talk about what it can actually tell us about the good life, the healthy and happy ambition of this project here. I think what hygge tells us, and that is actually beyond anything whether it is Danish or not, it is that a social vibe can charge a situation with meaning and relief. It can make a place that does not feel accommodating be it. So the sociality is primary, like how you are with other people. People are able to produce an atmosphere together where they can shed their anxieties, they can recompose themselves after stress, and they can regain energy and courage to go back into the world and be productive, be creative. And actually the roots of the word hygge comes from Norwegian and further back to Old Norse, and it points to people and places that give you courage and comfort and shelter. So hygge is like a temporary shelter. No one wants to be in hygge permanently. That would actually be immoral. It would be like you had stopped producing, stopped developing. So it is a temporary shelter, a bit like a pit stop where you come back to a sense that you're all right. Now, what is it that can give people this relief? Well, in hygge, people dwell on qualities that do not really depend on material success, and therefore, and that would be the interaction with other people, old friends, family, also new friends that just hit, the right vibe with you. Things that ideally cannot be taken away, even if for some reason you drop down on the success barometer. Also, ideally in hygge, when you experience that feeling, it means that you have the right to be where you are without needing to produce or consume anything. Now, of course, we can go to a cafe. We would usually need to buy a cup of coffee in order to be there. So there are always nuances to this. And that's why the archetypical hygge is in a way in someone's home, either your own or that of a friend or family, where, of course, no economic exchange is taking place. So it is about the right to be there. Now, people consume a lot of things. They spend money when they hygge. They eat, they drink a lot. But the thing is, those substances do not take center stage. It's not about impressing through them. There are no strong criteria for what you pull out of the fridge. It can basically be everyday things when people just drop by, because it's more about sort of facilitating the social interaction than actually being the center of it. We can say with an old Marxist concept, use value as opposed to exchange value, that these things are appreciated directly for their use value. I mean, for the sensory comfort that they can provide us, not really for the symbolism that they also have in terms of prestige through brand or design. Now, there are 1,000 nuances to this, because design definitely helps hygge along, but we only have these 18 minutes, right, Mark? So yeah. So let's get to Guernsey and ask. I mean, it is a great challenge for me, and one thing I think really develops my perspective to try and tie this to some idea of social transformation of a particular society. One thing I can say is that there are already some fundamentals in place. Just the basic fact of being an island is a really, really good starting point for hygge. Islands are good at hygge, generally. The reason for that is that hygge very much has to do with a sense of place, like feeling that this is a place with the boundaries, this is a place with the history, this is a place where there are relationships within the place. You may be part of those relationships, or you may just be a witness to the relationships. If that sounds abstract, try to imagine a holiday experience where you enter a family-owned restaurant somewhere in a small town in Italy, for example. I mean, that is classic holiday hygge. And you can see that all these people relate to each other. They call each other by first names. Sometimes the friends even end up behind the bar, things like that. You don't know who's servicing and who's just dropping by, but it's all sort of woven together. That's full of, and maybe you have the images of the family owning the place with their customers on the walls. You can feel the history. You can see the relations going on. You may not be part of them, but you really like witnessing them, just being there. And it's a bit like that. That is what small-scale communities can offer people who visit them. So there is something about sociality and about place that works well for islands. And what I would say, see, I took some pictures on my first walk just through town here. And I think this is really, there is a lot of hygge here. And what I would say is, don't make it too neat. I mean, it is really perfect to have these things. Here I see warm lighting. I see streets that are curved because like too many straight lines, too much visibility goes against this feeling, whereas the curved, the organic, that which has traces of history, traces of life. You want to feel life. It is essentially about the human factor, feeling that life has taken place before you were there, seeing the traces of it, and also seeing that it is taking place now. That's why the pipes on the wall are really are good. They show that people actually live here, even when I'm not around here, you know. And that's why it shouldn't be too neat, because then you take away some of those traces of life that is going on. Then we can ask, can a society actually willfully create hygge? And for example, of course, in a political context, does it take high tax, welfare state, the things that Scandinavia is known for? Because usually Scandinavians would say, of course it takes taxation and a state. What doesn't? But you know, I don't think necessarily that is the case. I would be a bad anthropologist if I would be ethnocentric if I just say, hey, our model is the only thing that works. But what I think you can work with, and I think the speaker after me and probably other speakers will talk about values as being important, setting some values being important for social transformation. They can never be too concrete, but I think you can work with some elements of social and cultural policy. For example, thinking about a deceleration of the pace of life, so the opposite of acceleration. Does something support the ability for people to basically take it easy and not burn out? There's a lot of focus on acceleration in sociology today with a German sociologist, Hartmut Rosa, who is doing some very important work on this. And I mean a pace in which these ecosystems, both natural and also cultural in terms of all these traces of life, can arise, and where people have time to look around and appreciate and get this multi-sensory experience instead of the tunnel vision of being stressed out. It also means, and that is of course where the state can play a role, to shelter people against constant competition, so that there are spaces in life where marketing yourself is not the thing that matters at that point. Also in urban planning is always about value. But developing spaces is always about value. Now, how does an urban space offers a real sense of place, which has these traces of life, both past and present? So it's something about defining a value that is not an object of international capital speculation, where you just want the value of real estate to grow and grow and grow, and then you sell and leave the place. Other policies also have to be in place. That can be state or other actors. And also production, where traces of production in everyday life are still going on and not just consumption. That's it for now, but do come over in the break to ask or comment, because all that interaction is also hygge, and I look forward to it. So thank you very much. Okay.